This is not a demonstration. Actually, Ms. Williams is conducting a treatment whilst I'm lecturing, but the important thing is what I'm saying, not what she's doing. All right? New direction in acne. Acne is probably one of the biggest scourges in skin today. I think it was last year, wasn't it, Vicky, when we did that big seminar at the Royal Academy of Medicine in London, the Acne Summit? And there were kids that came to that summit that got up and testified that they were ready to kill themselves and commit suicide because of acne. They've been on Roaccutane, they've had all these various treatments, and the drugs exacerbated their conditions. And one little girl actually said, and her mother sat in the front row, I was ready to off myself one day before I went and had the treatment, which changed my life. So when we're dealing with acne, we're not dealing just with changing a bit of skin, we're dealing with changing lives and giving people their life. So it's very important to understand exactly what acne is beyond just the fact it's a few pimples. The word acne comes from Greek, meaning acne or point. And of course, most of you that are professional therapists know that it's characterized by comedones, which are primary lesions, macules, papules, pustules, and sometimes cysts and scars. Technically, it's known as retention hyperkeratosis. That's the big name of it. Here are the actual 5 basic features that create acne. Increased sebum production, abnormal cell turnover, keratin plugging caused by cells keratinizing too rapidly, developing too rapidly, impaired acid mantle or abnormally in the microflora, and P. acnes bacteria. These are all byproducts of the bacteria produce inflammation and stimulate the process of pustule formation. The biggest contributor to teenage acne is elevated androgen and increased adrenal and testosterone. Now, behind all of that clever medical claptrap and verbiage, the biggest contributor to acne is stress. We have a little gland on top of our head called the hypothalamus gland. Think of it as a radio antenna, and it receives little signals of stress. Obviously, when we're in puberty and we're moving into adulthood, there's a lot of stress. There's stress from peer pressure, from peer groups, all over the place. Sexual stimulation, new sensations, all contribute to this stress factor. Once the hypothalamus gland receives the signal, it picks up the phone and calls the pituitary gland and says, look, stress is coming through. Pituitary gland picks up the telephone and calls the adrenal glands. Those are the excitement glands that give us all of our excitement when we're under any kind of stress. And they become excited and they call the testosterone, that little bit of male hormone that everybody has some. Men have more than women. Women have estrogen, but everybody has a little bit of testosterone. It immediately rings up the sebaceous gland in the epidermis and said, cause more oil or create more oil. And at that point, the person would just have excessively oily skin. That would be it. But unfortunately, there's over-keratinization taking place at the same time. Too many skin cells building up, building up, building up. And it becomes like water behind a dam. So that oil comes to the surface, it's backed by a plugged sebaceous gland, and immediately becomes a reservoir of sebum underneath the epidermis. Now the skin, trying to defend itself, perceives this as something not natural, and immediately starts to form little tiny new cells around it to kind of encapsulate it, to isolate it. That becomes a cyst, and that's one of those horrible little bumps that you try to squeeze or stick a lancet into and nothing comes out but blood. Most difficult thing to treat. All of this starts with hormonal fluctuations, stress, medications, of course. You heard me mention the drug Roaccutane. I am not a bit ashamed to say that myself and a lot of other members of the scientific community around the world, and also the medical field, are trying to get that particular drug stricken from the rolls, because it does exacerbate suicide conditions and it exacerbates so many other physiological problems. Hot and humid climates, of course, that would exacerbate acne, and irritating cosmetic ingredients. There is no single cause for oily or acne-prone skin, but stress is the #1 contributor to its inception. Starting somewhere before adolescence, or perhaps age 9 or 10, actually I started out when I was 15. And this was back in the 1950s. And we didn't have a lot of things for acne then except dermatologists, and they didn't sort me out at all. In fact, that's how I got into this field, I guess, is because I've sort of created things that cured myself. And that proved to me that when you do change the skin, you can change a life. Yes, I said the 1950s. I know some of you are thinking, how could he be a teenager in the 1950s? But I'm 72 years old, so that's how you're supposed to gasp. Yeah, I don't see bosom clutching. If I don't see bosom clutching, I give up. I retire. I haven't proved my point. All right. The adrenal glands start producing testosterone like crazy. Those are called DHEAs. Other androgens such as testosterone and dihydrotestosterone are also produced. And they, as I said before, stimulate the sebaceous gland to pump more oil. Now, let's pass by this and talk about diet. But when I was a little boy, everybody said, my mother often said, don't eat chocolate, don't eat greasy foods, don't eat fries, they all cause acne. And then later on, the medical field said, no, they don't cause acne. And it's true, these things do not cause acne, but they exacerbate the condition 50% more. Because it has to deal with the inflammation in the stomach, it has to deal with when people have diabetes, what are we talking about? What happens? Insulin, see, 72, short-term memory loss. Insulin production is extremely increased, and this does exacerbate the acne condition. So your patients must be put on a low-carb diet, very little fat diet. Sugar is like rat poisoning to them for a while. They have to change their plan of eating while you're working on the skin. There's no two ways about it. Now, physiological stress promotes oxidative stress and inflammation. And when I say physiological, I mean when they're looking in the mirror and they see this horrible pizza face looking back at them. They feel dirty, they feel unattractive, they feel the opposite sex or even the same sex will not like them. And so they become reclusive. This increases the stress through the hypothalamus gland at least another 50% more. But when they see things happening through the treatment, such as what Miss Williams is doing on this lady who does not have a single pimple on her face. I don't know why they got her, they should have gotten an acne model. When they see that change, suddenly 50% of that stress starts to reduce, and you have an internal healing as well as the topical healing. Sebum, as you know, is 1/2 of our acid mantle. When we're born with our own moisturizer. There's no such thing as a moisturizer. Creams do not moisturize. That was a word that was invented in 1962 by a New York advertising company to sell beauty creams. The only thing that moisturizes is water, and it's occluded in place by sebum or oil. So we have sudoriferous secretion, water, sweat, sebum, oil, occluded together on our skin every 3.5 hours when we're young, and we're naturally moist. We don't think about putting creams when we're little kids. We look great, okay? Over the years that go by, the cells start to build up, those ducts are plugged and become impacted in congestion, and that acid mantle then starts to disappear. And the only way to replace it is to physically replace it with a product. Okay. Also, another thing that happens at night particularly is cortisol levels start to go out the window. When our cortisol levels from acne increase happens, our intercellular fluids start to become unbalanced. The intercellular fluids become too high. The face starts to turn red and angry. It looks like it's on fire all the time, in addition to the pimples. Cortisol levels increase androgen, increases inflammation, increases all of the aspects of acne. What puts out fire? Water. So we've developed a special spray called AccuMist that not only kills the P. acnes bacteria at its inception, but elevates the hydration levels of the tissue. So there's no TEWL, transepidermal water loss. It's maximum putting out of fire. Everything starts to calm down. There are a variety of medicines available to fight the condition, but I've never liked any of them. I have never been an advocate of tretinoin, too many side effects. I've never been an advocate of topical antibiotics, too bad with the immune system. We used to use benzoyl peroxide. I mean, it was okay for short-term killing off of P. acnes bacteria, but it dried the hell out of the skin after a while. And let's think about it. It's a free radical. Benzoyl peroxide is an oxidative chemical. It is a free radical eventually. So it was not the best, okay? So we've decided to go another way in treating acne. First of all, by removal of the dead cells in the sebaceous plugs. Secondly, by addressing the hormonal cascade via the irritation factor, and also killing off the P. acnes bacteria. I was very fortunate to come across a wonderful wetting agent that makes water 10 times wetter than it is. So anything you put in it goes deep into the tissues immediately and can address any kind of bacteria or microflora that's in the skin. We use enzyme masks, such as she's putting on now, to create what we call reverse osmosis. In other words, all the peripheral capillaries in the skin, I don't think you'll be around to see the finish of this treatment, but you'll see that the client has a little road map of capillaries that show, just like, it looks like a road map. It's not just erythema, it's actually dilation of the peripheral capillaries. When this happens, fresh oxygen from the lungs, not from outside, but from the lungs, rushes through the capillary loops into the mitochondria. That's a little battery pack that every one of our cells has, okay? And that re-energizes that cell to maximum health, because the mitochondria is like the power station of a city. It produces kind of an energy or an electricity called ATP. In the cases of acne, all of this is slowed down. So now we have a healthy cell environment and a back flushing of the system with toxins coming out via the enzyme treatment, okay? We also have an alkaline wash treatment for severe acne that's really, really bad. It works on the principle of raising the pH of the skin to 12. Now, when you put an acid on skin, you bring it down to 4 under, you harden all the dead cells, and they kind of break up and they pop off the tissue. And we want to do that sometimes. That's how acids work. We may use that in other conditions. But in acne, you want to desquamate everything, including the hair that's impacted in the tissue. Because if you look at most females that have acne, even if they're very blonde, they have a lot of vellus hair on the face. Sometimes you can't see it with the naked eye, but you spray it with water and it'll bead up. That's because their testosterone is elevated and they have a little bit of secondary male characteristics. So we want to get rid of that. We want to get rid of all of the tops of all of the pustules, macules, papules, in about 4 or 5 to maximum 10 minutes. So we want to use an alkaline wash, which raises the pH of the skin to 12. Boom, everything's off and gone. You remove more tissue than 3 weeks of microdermabrasion or any kind of acid, because you don't want to harden those conditions, because when you harden the cells, you also harden the fat inside the cell, which makes it even more plugged and congested. So we use the alkaline treatment. There are some laser treatments in tandem that we also work around with. I'm not against machines particularly. I've never seen any that do what they say. But we have organized protocol over the last few years to go along with people's machines, because people will buy them no matter what's said. And so we just say, okay, fine, this is the protocol that works with that machine. Studies have shown that newly diagnosed acne patients tend to have lower levels of vitamin A, and that is true, okay, than people that don't have acne. People that have severe acne also have lower levels of vitamin E. Should you prescribe these supplements to your patients? Definitely yes. Put them on it. In addition to zinc. These are things you do outside of what you normally would use in topical treatment, okay? Vitamin E is a fat-soluble vitamin. It protects vitamin A and also the essential fatty acids in the tissue from oxidation in the body cells and prevents breakdown of body tissues. This helps to prevent scars. Because when you get these kids when they're new, they haven't really scarred badly yet. Now we can remove scars very easily from older people. In fact, we're known all over the world. DMK is #1 in scar revision. in medical centers, doctors' offices, trauma centers, and so on. But that takes months. These kids don't give you months. They want to see things happen right away. So these internal supplements are very necessary along with the topical treatment. One of the oils that we do provide is called sea buckthorn oil, and I get it right from the middle of Inner Mongolia, where it is wild, where it came from. Now, sea buckthorn is farmed all over the world. You can buy it at all the pharmacies and stores, but only in Mongolia is it wild. It's close by a town called Hohohate. I love to say that. Hohohate. That's the name of the town. And I've been to the village where they harvest this twice a year. I've been to the incredible laboratory where they process it, and that's the sea buckthorn that we issue under the DMK label. In sea buckthorn oil, vitamin E is present in its most maximum potency form called D-alpha tocopherol. Okay? It also has over 190 bioactive ingredients in that oil. I have never seen an oil anywhere on the planet that had that many. When I first discovered it, I was thrilled. And it was also almost by accident. You can read about some of these things in my book called The Maybelline Prince. It's on Amazon, Kindle, whatever. It's a tell-all. It'll shock you. You'll cry, you'll laugh. Every penny does go to the Harvey Milk Foundation, by the way. And it's becoming a bestseller. They're thinking of making a movie out of the first part of it. But the story of the sea buckthorn and how I discovered it by a miraculous accident is in that book. Plus a lot of things here in the UK from the old days and every other country in the world, including Finland, where you're from, Jessica. Okay? There I am discovering it. That was the very day, tasting the leaf. Essential fatty acids are vital. EFAs. The word essential means has to come from an outside source. Our body doesn't make it. Essential fatty acids help to maintain a water balance in that inflamed red skin, controls that inflammation in cases of infection and pus, and also situations of repair, helps to modulate and balance the androgens and the testosterone that's in the skin. It helps to improve the immune system to react properly, improves nerve and immune function. Fatty acids help move oxygen through the bloodstream. Very essential to take the fatty acids that we recommend. Beta-glucan. Beta-glucan is one of nature's little miracles. I kind of researched that little bugger, about 35 years ago. It is a polysaccharide. It's grown on barley corn, different beans, maize, mushrooms, many sources of it. It's very expensive to harvest. But for some reason, the Langerhans cells, those little octopus-like cells in our skin that represent our immune system, they've got long arms that reach out and snatch anything that's not supposed to be in the skin and destroy it. They love beta-glucan. We don't know why. I mean, it's like spinach to Popeye the Sailor Man. You know, the Langerhans cells' arms could be flapping and weak and the skin is broken out and inflamed, but the minute they're stimulated, boom, suddenly everything starts to heal. It's an amazing phenomenon, beta-glucan. It directly stimulates the Langerhans cells and has an antioxidant and free radical scavenging capabilities. It also controls the division of the epidermal cells and is responsible for all types of cellular growth. Is she baking now? Is she cooking? All right. All right, here's the new approach to acne, and I guess because we're in an open forum, I can actually mention products. That's not my style. For any of those of you who have read my articles over the years in various magazines, I never mention products, but I can today. First thing is AccuCleanse. I wanted to make a sulfate and paraben-free cleanser. Why did I say sulfate and paraben-free? Because those are cancer-causing and evil? No. There's nothing wrong with sulfates. There's nothing wrong with parabens. It's all a bunch of BS. There's never been any proof of anything. But rather than continue to fight the nutcases and the greenies and everybody else that doesn't really know anything, I said, hell, let's just not put it in. We don't have to. And we have other things now that are equally effective in destroying bacteria. This cleanser is deeply effective, yet calms with rich panthenol vitamin B5. It contains antimicrobial properties that are crucial to controlling the growth and spread of bacteria, and it rebalances the oil production. I also have included a new all-natural preservative. It's called Phytochem. It kills everything. We just did a kill time test at an independent lab about 3 months ago in Los Angeles, and I had them throw E. coli virus, P. acnes bacteria, I had them throw everything at it. It killed it all, 99.8%. Yes! So now we have an all-natural preservative called Phytochem. It's not Biosense anymore. Yeah, that guy, I'll tell you that story later, is terrible. He was holding me up with a gun. I said, naff off. I can make my own, and I did. And it's better. AccuMist. Now this is the secret weapon we're not supposed to talk about. You're supposed to tell your client, just spritz their face frequently every single day, and that's really one of the big secrets of killing off the P. acnes bacteria. We have to keep that hydration, like I talked about. We have to put that fire out every day, 2 or 3 times. But it's got a lot of that phytochem in it, which is only a preservative. But we know what's really going on in the P. acnes arena. So that's kind of the little secret weapon, all right? But don't tell anybody. AccuClear is a spot cream, which is replacing the benzoyl peroxide cream we used to have. It contains salicylic acid, which is a catalytic dead cell remover. It also contains azamide, which is an inhibitor of 5-alpha reductase type 1. 5-alpha reductase type 1 is an enzyme that helps to increase oil when it's going like crazy. We want to cut that back and balance it out. And azamide does that. I also loaded it up with niacinamide, which is a purifying capillary flusher, all right? And then a magnesium ascorbyl phosphate, which is a free radical scavenger and helps kick the hell out of the fibroblast cell to produce new collagen fibers to help heal those areas that might scar, that might have the cuneiform acne scar. We've also put a, this kills me, Carameric Trianda, sounds like an Italian opera singer, root extract. This is a really weird root extract from Africa that actually deals with the stress functions of skin, the hormonal functions. It's rich in lycopene, it's a super antioxidant, and it does help calm everything down very quickly. And to that I added zinc oxide and again magnesium ascorbyl phosphate. AccuMoist. AccuMoist is a nothing cream. It's completely innocuous. We just give it out so while they're undergoing treatment and some of the dead skin cells are still there, they feel dry and cracky because dead skin cells are smaller than living skin cells and they're still attached and they kind of pull. And this innocuous cream calms it all down. There's nothing in it to cause comedones, there's nothing in it to do anything, but it's necessary for the feeling of the tissue because people have to feel good once you start working on them. I have added, and this you shouldn't know, Vicki, because this is coming out after March, but I've added an SPF to it. This one is the power plant weapon, and you've got to tell these kids, be careful of this product. Once a day, that's it. It's very powerful. AccuTherm. Let's say you've got a big honker on your face. You've got a date Friday night. You want to get rid of it. First temptation is to squeeze, right? No. You just take this little pot of AccuTherm with a Q-tip. It's made with a non-petrolatum base. You put it on the zit. Suddenly it gets very hot for a second and then calms down. In about 24 hours, it dries up and falls off or just mysteriously disappears. It's very active. You have to be very careful. These kids go crazy with this kind of thing, and they'll start putting it on 20 times a day, and they'll end up with hyperpigmentation because their skin is too much action, too much trauma is going on there, and that flushing and healing. But it's a fantastic little pot that they carry with them as an emergency base. This is January 23rd, 2012. This is the kid that starred in that BBC docudrama that we were involved in, calling, what was it called? Dying for Clear Skin. I think it's still on YouTube. The BBC came to Sue at our Harley Street clinic and did this kid as an example of what could be done before committing suicide. And this is how he looked when he started out. A little bit better later. Ta-da! And he now, how old is he now? He's 17? He's become our little UK ambassador. He's always on the cell phone tweeting, and he's writing articles and posting articles and blogging to other guys how to shave with acne and all these things. He's a fantastic kid. We have a lot of them out there doing that for us. Well, I don't see the chap holding up the sign that says I'm through. I've got actually 3 minutes. Wow, that's the fastest DMK lecture that I've ever done in my life. Is there any quick questions in that 3 minutes? Anybody have a question? Anybody? Yes, ma'am. Oh, about my book? What did she say? Oh no, this is not in my book. You can go to the stand and talk to them. What stand number are you at? P91. 31. P31. Yeah, they'll give you all the information. But you really should buy the book because it is quite extraordinary. The Maybelline Prince. Maybelline like the eye makeup. Actually, it's about that family. Okay? Any other questions? Yes, madam. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of times they'll do that. They'll cleanse their face with the AccuCleanse. And that's a good idea, so thanks for doing that. And then they dot it on. Try to sleep on your back. And don't let it get in your eyes, or you'll end up with a German Shepherd and a white cane. And our solicitor will be hearing from you. Anybody else? Got 1 minute. Yes, madam. All right, here she's coming.
Very much. Is it suitable for hidradenitis, which is acne in the sweat glands?
Yes. Oh, certainly. Sure. Because it's all based on the same thing. P. acne bacteria over-inflaming certain areas, like even along the lymph glands and other areas like that. Actually, the enzyme treatment that she's just done addresses the lymphs in almost the same way as lymph drainage by Dr. Vauder. You know, that slow, precise pulse, pulse, rest, pulse, rest, pulse. So yes, certainly. Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been lovely to address you in a short lecture. Thank you very much for coming.